talk of a political dirt unit.
Hello, Daniel.
Oh, hey, Brendan.
Hey.
How's it going, mate?
How are you, Raoul?
Yeah, he's run off somewhere. Oh, he's out in the living room.
Oh, is he? Not even here. All right, that's... Nah, he's not going to cut it as a producer dog. The last episode we did was seeding the eschaton. So I was looking at how these eschatologies, this Islamic eschatology that is mainly centered in Iran, and the religious Zionism and the Christian Zionists, how these three end times theologies were all incubated in the late stages of the British Empire, towards the end of the 19th century. And what I wanted to do for this episode is look at the hidden fourth pillar in all this.
Oh, okay.
That is what is actually the driving factor of it all.
Oh.
And so I started putting this together, but then I started realizing that it actually ties in with some other stuff. So I started putting other stuff into the fold and seeing what that looks like. And eventually it's kind of spiraled out of control, and I realized that sort of every loose end we've come across in this last 5 years of doing all this research into all this different streams of conspiracy theories and the groups behind them, and all this, every sort of loose end that has ended up in the I don't know, or the too weird category or whatever. This is all encompassed in this fourth pillar. So I kept going and going on this script, and this script has turned into more of a book. It's over 200 pages long at this point.
It's gracious.
In the hope of being able to take storylines out of it and have, an hour and a half long podcast of its own individual story that is all a part of this greater, larger story that I've compiled here. Does that make sense? How I said that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my hope is, in the process, we'll be able to demonstrate how a lot of things that you would call esoteric conspiracy theories or the occult type tinge stuff, but not actually the actual practices of the occult. But I'm talking about things like the story of Atlantis and the whole Graham Hancock lost civilizations things, and how UFOs and how all this actually folds into this whole eschatological thing. So we'll eventually, we'll be touching on secret societies and the occult and every flavor of the occult, and how the texts and stuff came to be, and how they moved through society over the last couple of thousand years, and how they influenced events and things. And by the end, you will see that the picture of the modern world is not complete without understanding it. And it's in those gaps that we don't understand that the conspiracy theories emerge. So the aim is to fill those gaps with this story.
All right.
But today, we need to start from the absolute baseline.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing when that is.
It'll explain itself more as we go. But if there's a receptive audience and you guys can bear with me till we get to the point, a lot of things will click into place.
Okay.
Well, so I feel like a lot of this stuff, it seems like a curveball when it comes out, and you don't really know what to think of it. For example, the United States constantly saying aliens are real, or aliens are demons, or whatever. It's this is and I feel like we're in such weird times that no one is really stopping to be this is fucking bizarre. The vice president of the United States is going on podcasts saying that he knows aliens are real, but he believes they're demons.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about that. It's just It's impossible to take anything seriously anymore these days. You know what I mean? It's like, well, yeah, of course you say that because nothing fucking matters because this is a joke administration.
Yes. Well,
It's very strange.
this is the problem, okay? Because it's more than that. There's more than
Yeah.
it being a joke administration, but it's either, okay, well, JD Vance has some stuff that he's trying to get out and it might be bad, or
Yeah.
this is a joke administration, but it's not either of those things.
Sorry, I withdraw that. When I say joke administration, I don't mean they're not serious. I mean, it's nothing has any serious connection to reality necessarily. They will just say whatever to do whatever. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't mean that they're not serious actors.
This will not make things better,
Good.
but it does, like, it honestly, like, it helps to understand all this stuff because it doesn't make it look so, it's chaotic is what it is. But I guess the aim of the game is chaos. You know,
Yeah.
it makes it seem
Yeah, I think
like
that's what
not
I'm saying.
so random chaos.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying.
You know, so and also like this is a giant sweep to. Debunk is not really the word, but once we've finished all this stuff, you will have the vocabulary to talk to conspiracy theorists that believe all these different groups are controlling the world or whatever. You'll be able to talk to these people about the facts of the groups that they're talking about and not the wild stories that people generally concoct about them. As rooted in truth, a lot of those stories are.
Okay. Well, that's what I want.
Yeah. So, but like I said, we have to start from the absolute start.
Okay.
And the absolute start requires an understanding of the beliefs that led to this fourth strain. So, we're going back about 115,000 years. For millennia.
15,000 years.
Yeah.
It's about time we went back that far.
I know. This is important to the base layer of understanding of this whole thing. But it is a self-indulgent exercise because it's something that I've always wanted to plot out. And I've finally done it.
I'll indulge you.
So for millennia, humanity lived in the wild. We saw the Earth go through changes, cataclysms, ice ages. Doesn't matter how far we got in terms of organising a system, the Earth has always struck us back to nothing.
Well, not nothing. Excuse me. We've survived. It's struck us back to nearly nothing, perhaps.
Nothing in terms of the system that we've constructed around us, yeah.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So about 115,000 years ago, we entered the last ice age. And for about 40,000 years, we alternated between stadial, which is the intensely cold phase, and interstadial, which is the slightly less cold, more livable phase.
In between the cold bits.
Yeah. Still very cold and shit. Then, 74,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano in Indonesia erupted. This was a VEI 8 event, the highest possible rating on the Volcanic Explosivity Index. The largest known eruption on Earth in the last 2.5 million years.
What did you say it was called again, sorry?
It was the Toba supervolcano.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds...
It ejected 2,800 cubic kilometres of material into the stratosphere, which then blanketed the Earth and dimmed the sun. This plunged the Earth into a volcanic winter, already in the depths of the Ice Age, which lasted 6 to 10 years, which was then followed by an extreme 1,000-year-long cooling period.
Jesus Christ. When was this again?
This was 74,000 years ago.
74,000 years ago. Toba.
Yeah. Humanity emerged from this with an estimated population of 1 to 10,000 individuals.
Well, they made it. They made it.
We've made it just. And then over the following tens of thousands of years, the Ice Age got colder and colder. So we spread out and multiplied in search of warmer lands, presumably. The Ice Age peaked around 26,500 to 19,000 years ago, when the world started to warm. The ice was retreating. Lands that had been inhospitable and at times completely covered in ice, places like Europe, were now growing forests. The world continued on this warming trajectory for 5,000 years when suddenly, out of nowhere, the warming stalled and violently snapped back. Over the course of a few decades, temperatures in the northern hemisphere dropped significantly. The promise of a warm, lush world was a lie. The ice was returning. Europe would have seen a return to tundra-like conditions, and with the forests making way for barren grasslands. And it was a harsh but survivable interruption.
Is this the Little Ice Age that we hear about?
This was the older Dryas.
Oh, okay.
Then 300 years later, just as suddenly as it began, the Earth stabilised and the warming resumed. The ice retreated again, the forests regrew, and humanity had a brief window of relative stability. This period is known as the Alarod warming, which was the end of the older Dryas. Mm-hmm. And the world kept warming for the next 800 years. This was the era when the sun rose against the backdrop of Virgo on the spring equinox. The concept of a god was incomprehensible to these people. They were just concerned with staying alive while at the mercy of the elements. The spiritual beliefs of this era are defined by the Venus figurines. These are the oldest religious artifacts ever discovered. The Venus of Willendorf, the Venus of Dolny Vistinice. These are small, faceless female idols with massively exaggerated breasts, hips, and vulvas. They're icons of the abstract concept of fertility. They're physical representation of the Virgo, the primordial, untamed virgin Earth Mother that nomadic hunters relied upon for survival. This is the dominant symbol of the entire Upper Paleolithic period.
Is it related to the planet at this stage, or no?
No, this is just a constellation Virgo. But the Earth was now warm and green and abundant. And the future seemed bright when suddenly and catastrophically in came the younger Dryas. There's no real certainty on what started the chain reaction that caused the younger Dryas. But the general consensus is that a massive pulse of fresh water from a melting North American ice dam flooded into the North Atlantic, shutting down the thermohaline circulation that brought warm water north. What that means is that the planet's heating system was switched off. Evidence from ice cores show that in some regions like Greenland, average temperatures plummeted by as much as 15 degrees in less than a decade. Within a single lifetime, the forests would have died, the sky would have filled with dust from the expanding cold deserts, the great herds of megafauna like the mammoths, the mastodons, giant sloths, the diprotodons, the giant wombats, the megalania, the giant iguanas, they all disappeared. The Clovis culture in North America vanished from the archaeological record at this time. It was an environmental collapse of almost incomprehensible speed and violence. And then, for 12 centuries, the world was locked in a cold, dry, and hostile state. Populations crashed. The survivors were forced into smaller, more resilient groups, clinging to life in coastal areas or sheltered valleys. It was a desperate 1,200-year-long struggle for survival.
And how far back are we at this point?
This was it was about 12,000 years ago.
12,000 years ago.
And this start of the younger Dryas coincided with the start of the era when the sun rose against the backdrop of Leo in the spring equinox. The age of the lion, representing the sun, fire, royalty, courage, and the apex predator.
Did it represent those things back then, though? Or is that a modern affection?
Well, we don't know. This seems to. This seems to be the oldest. The stars, the constellation that rises in the spring equinox, that is where the sun rises in the spring equinox, seems to have be the oldest spiritual tradition that we've retained.
And when you say where the sun rises, does that mean like before the sun comes up, that's the constellation? If you look that way, if you look east, that's the constellation that you see, and then the sun comes up in there.
Yeah, and the equinox because the sun stays in that spot for 3 days or whatever.
Okay.
So, and the symbolism in the sky was reflected on the ground below. This was an age where survival depended on strength and dominance over a hostile environment. The primary human social unit was the hunter-gatherer tribe, led by the strongest and most successful hunter.
Yeah, God, you wouldn't want to think about the other tribes coming over the hill, would you? That would not be...
Not be a good time to be around.
That's awful. And then you've got to be as tough as you can. God damn it.
Yeah. In the cave art of the era, we see the dominant icon of the lion. They were painting the ultimate predator, the embodiment of the raw solar power that governed their world. Then suddenly, around 9,700 BC, that raw solar power came roaring back. Temperatures shot up again, in some cases rising 10 degrees in a single decade. Which you'd think would be a good thing. But the vast ice sheets that still covered much of the northern hemisphere melted. Quickly. Too quickly. This unleashed floods on a scale we cannot even comprehend today. This is the deeply ingrained, long-forgotten source for the great flood myths found in virtually every culture on Earth.
Yes,
we're talking about sea levels rising dramatically, river valleys being scoured by continent-sized torrents of meltwater, the entire coastlines being redrawn, the event known as the Black Sea Deluge, where the Mediterranean breached the Bosporus and flooded a massive freshwater lake. This happened right at the tail end of this period.
It's when people get cut off from each other as well, right?
Yeah, just changes everywhere.
Can't walk from Russia to Alaska anymore. Probably can't walk to Australia, can't walk to Tasmania.
Yep.
Or back from Tasmania.
By 8000 BC, the world had stabilised. We were foraging and hunting, and we'd spread far and wide by this point, but we were tired. We were starting to think about putting down roots in a single geographical location. This was the age of Cancer, the Great Mother. The symbol of Cancer is the crab, which carries its home on its back and retreats into its protective shell. And again, we see this reflected in the world below.
Okay.
During this era, for the first time in history, humans started building permanent homes. In the city of Catalhoyuk in modern-day Turkey, their primary deity was a corpulent, pregnant goddess figure, often depicted giving birth or flanked by powerful animals. The famous seated woman of Catalhoyuk is the ultimate icon of this era. She is the archetype of the Cancerian Great Mother made manifest in clay. Cancer is also a moon sign, and reflecting this, they were also tracking the lunar cycles. The moon's phase dictated the planting and harvesting of the first crops and were intrinsically linked to the female menstrual cycle, reinforcing this connection between the celestial, the agricultural, and human fertility.
Yeah, that's a funny one, huh?
Yeah.
28.
And around 6000 BC, this changes again with the age. Now the sun rises in Gemini on the spring equinox. Gemini is the twins, symbolising duality, polarity, and the relationship between two complementary or opposing forces. The age of Gemini is the historical period where humanity was making the chaotic transition from nomadic hunter-gatherer life to settled agriculture. You have two fundamentally different types of humans living side by side, the farmer and the nomad. And this is where we start to see the first creation myths, many of which start with a pair of primordial twins who either cooperate to build the world or have a fatal rivalry that results in its creation. The world becomes defined by the idea of pairs. It's the moment humanity started to think in binaries, light and dark, good and evil, settlers, nomads, life and death. The first large-scale crops were being harvested, and eventually large harvests were being stolen by bigger people who didn't plant crops. The Age of Gemini is where humanity carved the world in two, and the myths reflect the fundamental act of division. Okay. But right at the end of the Age of Gemini, we discovered gold. The physical discovery was pretty unremarkable. Early humans walked into riverbeds and picked up heavy, shining nuggets of placer gold that had eroded out of the mountains. The metal exists in nature in its native elemental state. Because it's incredibly malleable, people took river rocks and pounded gold flat while it was cold, shaping it into beads and sheets without the need for complex smelting or metallurgy. Gold possesses a specific chemical property that was unheard of before in the ancient world. It's completely incorruptible. It resists all rush, tarnish, and decay. So the developing priesthoods equated this physical permanence with immortality. They categorized the metal as condensed sunlight embedded in dirt, treating it as a physical proxy for the divine.
And look, I mean, fair enough. It is a pretty cool rock.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, as if you wouldn't think.
Like it is that shiny, and they're just like, without the context that we have today, they are just finding it in riverbeds and going, oh, look at that rock.
Yeah, but as if you wouldn't like hold it above any other rock. Like, it's awesome.
It is fucking shiny. It is fucking malleable. It doesn't rust. It's an extremely good rock.
Yeah. So, so this solved the primary logistical problem of the agricultural revolution. Farmers generated massive crop surpluses that were subject to rodents and fire. Gold provided the mechanism for permanent hoardable wealth.
What, as a currency, you mean? Or?
As a currency, yeah.
Right, okay.
So now we could easily exchange the perishable calories for an imperishable compact metal.
Right. Gold wasn't the first currency, was it?
No, but it's one that holds its value because it stays.
Yeah, sure.
It stays, intact. Around 4000 BC, as the spring sun began its slow passage through the stars of the bull, Taurus, they started making little bulls and shit out of gold. And then people started using gold to buy crops. People harvesting the crops started getting very wealthy, and eventually their crops and gold was stolen by a tougher group of people that managed to organise enough people to pull it off. This keeps happening, and eventually the bigger people realise if they keep killing the people growing the crops, they won't have crops. So instead an agreement was reached where the farmers just give the tough guys some gold, and in return they'll protect them from themselves.
Bada bing.
This grew as well, and over hundreds of years the foundational stories were rewritten. In the new stories, the old spirits of the earth were demoted, demonised or murdered, and in their place rose stories of a pantheon of violent, dysfunctional, hierarchical sky gods that mirrored the system below. These were celestial dictators demanding tribute. In the new myths, humanity was created as a slave race, its purpose to feed the gods and the state through endless labour and blood sacrifice. The world was now a kingdom to be conquered, a constant war between divine order and the chaos. And this system held for nearly 3,000 years. While the sun made its journey through Taurus, the great empires rose in Egypt, Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and Greece. They were connected by a vast international trade network moving tin, copper, and gold across the known world. The God King was the central circuit through which the power of the heavens flowed into the material world. The symbolism of the bull was everywhere. The Egyptians venerated the Apis bull. The Cretans built their labyrinth for the Minotaur. The Sumerian epics featured the bull of heaven.
And are you saying that's because the stars that were behind the sun at 5 a.m. looked like a bull?
It's the constellation Taurus, yeah. So this actually starts being a deliberate reflection of the stars in this period.
But they don't even really look like a bull, do they? Do they look like a bull?
No, but this is what I'm saying. The zodiac,
Yeah.
the zodiac constellations appear to be the oldest. Like, I don't know what you like. It's not like a cult, because a cult means hidden, and it's only been hidden in this age. But it's like, yeah, this is the secret knowledge that's been handed down. The oldest of that knowledge is the constellations of the zodiac. And
Well, so how old is the zodiac, I guess?
well, written down, like actually recorded, it's Sumeria.
Which is, what, 10,000?
It's this Age of Gemini.
But how did they know that there were 12? They didn't...
This is
Is this what we're talking about? This is...
Well, this is what this episode is focused on. So,
Yeah,
you know, we need to
exactly.
get
So that's cool.
This is the foundations of. I mean, and it is fucking wild how far-reaching the influence of this goes, and how far-reaching and how much time and effort people have put into trying to understand this and then use it as a prediction.
Yeah, I don't have a very good understanding of it, but I know that there are ages, and then obviously I know that there are, periods within the year. So how long is an age? An age is what, like a few hundred years?
No. So the great year is like the full cycle of the 12 constellations is about 24,000 years.
Okay, so it's about 2,000 years per thing.
And yeah, it's like 2,160 is like what it divides up by 12 to.
Okay. And where are we in the story now? Taurus.
So we're in the Taurus, the age of the bull.
Taurus.
And so when I say like the new myths, humanity was created as a slave race to feed the gods and the state through endless labor and blood sacrifice. That's the Sumerian. That's the origins of the Sumerian mythology, which is the oldest recorded mythology. But it is reflected. Like you go, I mean, like I said, that's Sumerian. The Sumerian mythology started in the Gemini age, and it was this theme of the twins and binary. It's not just Sumeria, but like the Vedic text, and which was written down in the Bronze Age, which was later.
The Vedics weren't playing connect the dots in the same way that the Sumerians were, though, were they?
Sumerians weren't playing connect the dots either. They were.
That's what it all comes from when you play connect the dots with the stars in the sky, weren't they? No?
Well, yeah, I get you. I thought you meant like connect the dots on like that meaning this down here. No. It's these trends are like I've checked this.
More universal than I think.
They are reflected universally. Yeah. So each age has not seen a drastic change, like confined to like the Middle East and Europe. It is pretty much, aside from like Australia, it is pretty much worldwide. These changes happen, and the focus shifts to be more aligned with the vibe of the constellation that's there.
Yeah, okay.
So, like, for example, 8 to 6,000 BC, which is when the Vedic myths originated. This is where all the binary stuff that we have now trickled down into our current religions. This is where it all originates from.
Mm-hmm.
So, around 2000 BC, the equinox point shifted from Taurus into the constellation of Aries the Ram. And the old world clung on for about 800 years. The climate grew harsher, migrations intensified, and the intricate trade networks of the Bronze Age began to fray. And around 1200 BC, a wave of seaborne invaders, known to the Egyptians as the Sea Peoples, swept through the eastern Mediterranean. They weren't one people. According to the Egyptians, they consisted of about 5 or 6 different waves of people. The Bronze Age was hit with like 2 subsequent great droughts that completely decimated them. So the Sea Peoples were likely the migrant populations escaping their collapsed civilization, going to the next one that's still clinging on, and basically just raping and pillaging for all the food and women that they have, and then moving on to the next place. And this was a complete reset. All the cities were burned to the ground. The Hittite Empire was annihilated. The palace states of like Greece, Mycenaean Greece, they're all erased.
Yep.
In entire regions, the knowledge of writing was lost.
Yeah.
And the international trade network that formed the backbone of civilization ceased to exist. Well, Egypt lost a lot of their knowledge. Like, they lost pretty much all their knowledge
before they came.
But the system, from like during the Bronze Age. But after the collapse, Egypt managed to at least exist still.
Sure.
It was a completely new world came out of this. The world entered a dark age. Survivors were scattered, isolated, and poor.
And when are we again?
Well, this is the Bronze Age collapse. This was about 1200 BC. The intricate societies of the Bronze Age were gone, and the time of god kings having humanity locked down was over. We were essentially left to our own devices, and we had to figure shit out for ourselves. The ancient world underwent a theological restructuring to align with the ram. The Egyptians at this point transitioned their primary worship to Amun, the ram-headed god. The biblical text documents this astrological transition. Moses descends from Mount Sinai to find the Israelites worshipping the golden calf. He destroys the idol and shatters the tablets, ending the Age of the Bull. The Israelite priesthood subsequently institutes the blowing of the shofar, the ram's horn, and the blood sacrifice of the Passover lamb. Yeah, the religion of the ram took precedence. In Rome, they elevated the planetary representative of Aries, which is Mars, above all else.
Oh, I just got the Aries thing. It's spelt differently. The constellation's Aries. But you're right. Aries is the god Mars. And that's Aries, but you say it the same. God.
They also explicitly absorbed the ram iconography. When the Greeks and Romans integrated with Egypt, they fused their supreme sky god, same shit, Zeus or Jupiter, with the Egyptian ram god Amun, and created the syncretic deity Jupiter Ammon. Roman art and coinage heavily depicted Jupiter Ammon with massive ram horns coiling around his ears.
Yeah.
The Roman legions followed the cult of Mithras, the central icon of Mithraism, which is found in their subterranean temples across the entire empire. It's a carving of the god Mithras physically sitting on the throat of a massive bull. The Roman military elite worshipped an icon depicting the literal violent slaughter of the Age of Taurus to make way for the new era.
Maybe there is something to this.
That's what I'm saying. So from the time of like Babylon, this is when like it became a direct reflection, because people,
right.
It was codified, and this is the to these people in the post Bronze Age world. So in the time of Aries, this is the occult to them. The occult, the secrets of the old religions was the occult knowledge was the knowledge of the zodiac and the ages. And so that's why it's way more heavily reflected in that, because they came from that baseline. Even though, like, for the Egyptians, it was very, like, the stars were the positions of the stars were the central thing. For, like, the Babylonians, which came before, they were tracked and they were important and they were followed, but it's not like they're deities. It's not like they were sitting on the fucking collapsed towers of Gemini, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever was before him. Whereas, like, it was very much baked into the start of these new ones because it was the status quo for the previous era, if that makes sense. So the 2 millennia later, the celestial clock ticked over into the age of Pisces. The New Testament introduces Jesus pretty much exactly as the sun transitions into the sign of the fish, and the symbolism shifts immediately to match the sky. The Lamb of God arrives as the final sacrifice to close out the age of the ram. The symbol of the ram becomes the devil, and Jesus recruits fishermen to be his disciples. He feeds the masses with 2 fish, and the early underground Christian church adopts the symbol of the fish as their covert password.
And still today.
Yeah, so when
bumper stickers.
Yeah. So when and that exact bumper sticker fish, which is the Pisces symbol, that were when Christianity was underground.
Yeah.
They used to say you'd have like 2 people, walking through the woods or whatever, and one person would draw the top arc of the fish, and the other person would complete it with the bottom, and that was like the secret password of like, we're both Christians.
Sure. The constellation Pisces doesn't even look like a fish, though.
Nah, they don't. And the authors of the Christian doctrine embedded the expiration date of this epoch directly into the text. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus' disciples ask him where they should prepare for the next Passover, requesting instructions on what comes after his departure. He instructs them to enter the city and follow a man bearing a pitcher of water. This is the literal astrological symbol for Aquarius.
Oh my god.
And the key thing to note with the transitions of these ages is that each age has seen society transform so radically that civilization at the midpoint of one epoch would be completely incomprehensibly unimaginable to those that lived in the midpoint of the age before. That being said, let me be perfectly clear. I don't think that the archetype we've assigned to a group of stars being in a certain position relative to the sun on a certain day each year actually has any bearing over what's happening on the Earth.
Well, it kind of sounds like you do, Brendan.
The point of this story is not about magic or the power of the stars. This is a story about the collision of the power of belief, the placebo effect, with the human drive to discover hidden knowledge, and how those at the top of the pyramid have always had an interest in finding that hidden knowledge and using it for themselves.
Okay.
So, I will point out at this point that these constellations, the way that they've worked this out, it's not the actual movement of those constellations through the spot. Like they've taken the full great year of 25,000 years or whatever, and they've divided it by 12. But each constellation is different size, so they all the years they don't actually match up. So I got the actual astrological dates, and I had a look to see if they still match up that well. So the dawn of the Age of Taurus, which is said to be 4000 BC, it's actually about 4500 BC. That's the real start of the Age of Taurus, and that's really interesting because the dates given is somewhere from 4560 to 4450 BC. So basically, exactly on the dawn of Taurus, we find the oldest manufactured gold treasure ever discovered on Earth. The earliest example in human history where we see graves where one guy's buried with pounds of solid gold, copper, weapons, and a scepter, while the people around him are all buried in the dirt with nothing. So this dawn of the Age of Taurus is the exact moment humanity invented the concept of hoarded material wealth and the ruling class.
Okay.
The bull economy literally began with the first gold rush.
The bull. That's right.
The real dawn of Aries is 1865 BC. So it's a little more recent than the 2000 BC that is given, but it actually aligns more with the shift to the ram. But the dawn of Pisces is the most interesting one, because the actual date for the start of Pisces is 68 BC. And in 63 BC was when the Roman general Pompey the Great marched into the Levant and conquered Jerusalem. He physically entered the Holy of Holies in the Second Temple. He destroys the Jewish Hasmonean kingdom and annexes Judea as a client state of the Roman Republic.
And that's when the Age of Pisces starts.
And that is like pretty much 5 years after the actual start of the Age of Pisces. And this was this Roman capture of Jerusalem in 63 BC. It was the literal physical catalyst that sets the stage for the birth of Jesus, the Jewish revolts, and then the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, and the consequent 2,000-year spread of Christianity across the globe.
Was that when the... No, this is post-exile, isn't it? Yes, very much post-exile.
Yeah. And right after this, the Roman Republic collapsed into a civil war. Julius Caesar and Augustus turned Rome into an autocratic empire. The monolithic systems that defined the next 2 millennia were physically established within a decade of this astronomical transition. Very interesting. But onwards. So, during the Age of Gemini, the ancient Indo-Iranian tribes shared a single language, culture, and cosmology. When these tribes migrated, they split. One faction moved southeast into the Indus Valley, eventually recording the Vedic texts of ancient India in Sanskrit, and the other faction moved southwest into Persia. Sometime between 1500 and 1000 BC, so right after the Bronze Age collapse, when we're starting to figure shit out for ourselves, a Persian priest named Zoroaster took that shared ancestral mythological foundation and he built his own on top. This became known as Zoroastrianism. And while this theology is profound and beautiful in itself, he made some deliberate adjustments. In the Vedic text, the devas were revered as shining, benevolent deities. Zoroaster flipped that, and in his new framework, the devas were literal demons and agents of deception, the absolute evil and the clear bad guy. The Vedic traditions of his ancestors, they had a distinct Gemini influence. It was a theology of duality that operated in cycles, a balanced repetition of ages, creation and destruction, good and evil. But he understood that the introduction of an absolute evil required some hope. So Zoroaster replaced the cycle with a linear timeline, a distinct beginning, a binary cosmic war between absolute good and absolute evil, and a defining catastrophic ending. He introduced angels, demons, a final judgment, and a messiah figure arriving at the end of history to purge the world with fire. The priests of this Persian religion were known as the Magi. And these Magi were wandering priests. They would wander into the Greek world. And before long, they would find themselves enjoying deep discussions and swapping ideas at the philosophical academy of a man named Plato. And when the Greeks encountered them, their rituals and their perceived ability to manipulate reality provided the root for the word magic. The foundations of Western culture were laid by Homer in the 8th century BC. Utilizing the former mythological system, Homer provided the Greeks with their language and their myths. And then in the 4th century BC, Plato came along and realized this whole system is too chaotic and outdated, and they needed a completely new system. Plato provided the philosophical and political concepts updated for the new age. Plato was attempting to solve the instability of Athenian society and the moral chaos of the old Homeric gods. In his work, The Republic, he bypassed the physical gods entirely and proposed a higher mathematical dimension known as the realm of forms. He argued that the physical world was a flawed shadow of perfect eternal blueprints existing in an invisible realm.
The Platonic ideal.
The Platonic ideals. It's a profound philosophical exercise designed to find absolute uncorrupted truth. Grasping the truth required decades of rigorous education in geometry, mathematics and logic. But Plato's influence was immense. The concept of an immaterial spirit realm separate from the earthly realm, a divine creator, and the immortal soul all came from Plato. His work was interpreted and used in the foundations of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Hellenistic Jewish scholars like Philo of Alexandria fused the Torah with Platonic ideals centuries before the Roman Empire adopted the cross. In 586 BC, the Babylonian Empire exiled the Jews, and decades later, the Persian king Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon and freed them. During that exposure to the Persian Empire, the Jewish priesthood absorbed the Zoroastrian ideas, concepts like heaven and hell, angels and demons, and more importantly, the concept of an apocalyptic endgame was folded into Second Temple Judaism. When Christianity came around, the early church fathers essentially Christianized Plato to make their desert religion palatable to the Greco-Roman elite.
Yeah, I feel like that's a huge moment there, where where that exile happens. They go, and that's where they absorb the, and that's why the world is the way that it is today.
Absolutely,
that little exile.
That's exactly it. That is. Yeah. It's good that you put an underline under that because and said it in that way because that is it, and that is where, but that is also where we see like a deviation. This is so I guess the birth is also the birth of the occult, because there's also a theme through these ages that as the new mythologies take form, the priesthoods at the centre start trying to discover the lost knowledge of the previous era. And this was reflected most notably in Egypt. Outwardly, their mythology was all about the positions of the stars. But the native ancient name for Egypt is Kemet, or the land of Chem, and it's the literal etymological origin of the words alchemy and chemistry. The Kemetic priesthoods spent millennia refining the magic of the shamans that came before them, perfecting the manipulation of reality. Outwardly, it was all chants and symbols, but inside, they were early pharmacologists. They utilized psychoactive botanicals like the blue water lily to induce altered states of consciousness, dissolve the ego, and commune with the divine.
That's wild.
Here's the most important bit of this. Between the 1st and 3rd centuries CE, while Christianity was growing in the philosophical underground, scholars in Alexandria took Plato's ideas and combined them with the ancient rituals of Egypt. To grant their new texts authority, they published them under the pseudonym Hermes Trismegistus. It's a syncretic mashup of the Greek god Hermes and the Kemetic god Thoth. And this particular train of thought is known as Hermeticism. And this pharmacological integration that was present in Egypt also extended into Europe. For nearly 2 millennia, the apex of the Greco-Roman elite, including Plato, they made a pilgrimage to the Eleusinian mysteries. To complete their initiation, they drank a state-protected brew called kykeon. And archaeochemistry indicates that kykeon was brewed from barley infected with ergot, which is a highly psychoactive fungus that contains LSD. So the philosophical architecture regarding the immortal soul and the ethereal realm was developed directly following the ingestion of these compounds. These compounds provided the ultimate way to think outside the box, or outside the cave. So in Plato's allegory of the cave, the masses are depicted as prisoners, chained in the dark, staring at shadows on a wall, believing those shadows are the entirety of reality. And he argued that society must be governed by an elite class of philosopher kings who have stepped outside the cave. This intellectual elite has a moral obligation to use myth and targeted deception to govern a population that is fundamentally incapable of handling the truth. Plato called this the noble lie. And in the Hermetic universe, subsequently adopted by Hermes Trismegistus, the human world was governed by the Ennead, a supreme council of 9 creator gods. They sat at the absolute apex of the pyramid, dictating the physical laws of reality from above, completely separate from the people in the material world. And in the apocryphal Abrahamic text, the Book of Enoch, this dynamic takes a physical form, and the text introduces the Watchers, a faction of angels who descended to Earth to operate from the shadows. The Watchers actively manipulated humans by introducing forbidden knowledge, teaching humanity metallurgy, advanced weaponry, and astrology. This concept is just as influential on the modern day as anything in the Abrahamic texts. It's just that, for the most part, it's been kept a secret. Like the priesthoods of Egypt keeping the occult knowledge of the shamans from the ages before them, the priesthood of this new age tried their hardest to preserve the knowledge for themselves while keeping the rest of the population in the dark. So the Book of Enoch was incredibly popular during the Second Temple period, but when the Romans destroyed the temple in 70 CE, the rabbis had to consolidate their texts in order for it to survive. And a narrative about rogue angels possessing free will, defying God, and handing advanced technology to humanity was an easy target for the cutting room floor. Fragments of
survived in Genesis, though.
Not the Book of Enoch, though. I mean,
but the idea of like a fallen angel. Well, not that the snake was originally Satan, but that idea of a fallen angel giving humans this.
That
technology.
That bit definitely kept it in, but the
but that's
group of
thing.
Avengers.
But there's an interest. Yeah, obviously, yes, it's not the group of Avengers, but that idea of a fallen angel giving humans this thing in spite of in defiance of God's wishes. But then that's also the story of Prometheus, isn't it?
Yes.
Similar kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes, very similar, and probably the inspiration.
Same thing. Yeah, it's the same story.
Well, it's like the Jesus dying and rising on the spring equinox. It's just it's a mirror of. It's a mirror of the equinox in the sun. The sun dies and then it rises again 3 days later and keeps moving. Yeah. And this is the absolute core of the Egyptian mythology, and the Hermetic mythology that followed is as above, so below. That's why the Egyptians, made all their monuments and stuff aligned with different stars and stuff like that. So they believed that for the world to exist in balance, everything on the earth has to mirror what's going on above in the sky at the time that it was put there. So, and those fragments of the Book of Enoch were the original Book of Enoch, the Hebrew one, were discovered in a cave in the desert midway through last century as part of what's known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is
How cool
an interesting aside. Yeah,
they stick them in a cave and then we find them 2,000 years later. That's awesome.
Yeah. Similarly, in Christianity, the Book of Enoch was initially wildly popular. The early church fathers loved it, and the New Testament even quotes it. But when the Romans started locking down the canon around 390 CE, the powers that decided it didn't fit the vibe they were trying to build, and they took it out.
Fuck you, Romans.
The Ethiopian church, however, said fuck that and kept the book in their Bible in its entirety, where it survived until Europeans discovered it in 1773.
Yeah. Christians that I talk to, they appreciate the Ethiopian Bible. They think that's a big thing.
It's still a wildly popular book, especially amongst Protestants.
Yeah, especially among the conspiratorial, the people who came to Christianity through conspiracism.
Yeah, the Protestants.
They dig the... No, I mean the cookers today. That the new Christians who've come there in the last 5 years and who got there from reading conspiracies and stuff, and then you know the people I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
they like the Ethiopian Bible.
So, while the Christianity took over the Roman Empire, and then Europe as a whole, and Europeans subsequently erased any non-Christian or pagan ideas, the Hermetic texts also disappeared. What's that?
It's my least favourite part of the story.
Yeah. Well, the Hermetic texts also disappeared from the continent. They lived on, however, in the Islamic world, in Haran, which is modern-day Turkey and Syria, with a group of astronomers and mathematicians called the Sabians. These guys are mentioned in the Quran as people of the book, so they enjoyed Islamic protection, but they also considered Hermes Trismegistus to be a prophet, and they practiced astrology. Around the year 750, they translated the text into Arabic. To survive the scrutiny of Orthodox clerics, they equated Hermes Trismegistus with the Quranic prophet Idris, who is the same figure as the biblical Enoch. So by classifying Hermes as Enoch, an ancient legitimate Islamic prophet who was given the sciences of astronomy and alchemy by God before the Great Flood, Hermeticism was granted total theological immunity. The esoteric sciences became permissible. This protected pipeline allowed the physical sciences and esoteric arts to flourish under the Abbasid Caliphate. So in the late 8th century, a polymath named Jabir ibn Hayyan was operating in the court of Harun al-Rashid in Baghdad, and he took the fragmented Greek and Egyptian alchemical texts and synthesized them. To the modern world, he's recognized under the Latinized name Geber, but he is the undisputed father of early chemistry. He invented the alembic still, he documented the crystallization process, and he discovered the formulations for various acids. He developed a doctrine known as the science of balance, and he asserted that the physical universe was governed by strict mathematical harmony, and that the Arab alphabet was structurally tied to the elemental properties of the physical world. By calculating the numerical values of the letters in a substance's name, an alchemist could determine its elemental composition and alter its physical reality.
No, god damn it. No, we're going so well. Don't slide into numerology.
No numerology.
The words, we just made up the words. That's not
Alchemy.
the thing. The words, the map is not the territory. The menu's not the meal. The word is not the thing. Don't look at the word, look at the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but all they had was words.
No, but he was smart enough to know that.
He wrote extensively.
He was smart enough to know that the word was an invention, not the thing.
But it was like knowing the words were the keys that unlocked the map of how to process the chemicals.
Mm.
It's like embedding the map in the words. He also wrote extensively on a concept called Tarquin, which detailed the theoretical procedures for the alchemical creation of artificial life in a laboratory.
Oh, now we're talking.
By the 12th century, Islamic mysticism had organized into Sufi tariqas, or brotherhoods.
I probably should have asked this before, sorry, but Hermetic text, is that drawn from the god Hermes, the messenger?
Yeah, so it's the combination of Greek mythology and Egyptian mythology, or Kemetic mythology, together. So the name is a syncretic mix of Hermes and Thoth.
Hermes being the messenger god?
Yeah, and Thoth also being the messenger god. It's the Egyptian equivalent.
All right, and so now it's here. It's carrying on that messenger lineage.
Well, yeah, I guess it became the messenger. or
Yeah.
it became the messenger itself.
Because that's what, I mean, yeah, shit, that's what Muhammad was, right? He was the messenger. That's a different thing, though.
Yeah, but Muhammad wasn't tied up in any of
It's
this.
not this, yeah, that's a different thing, but he was the messenger. Okay.
And so the Sufis, so they had these like strict hierarchical way that they operated, where you had to be completely obedient to the local master. They had secret rituals, and they had this like specialized breathing and chanting technique designed to alter consciousness. Yeah, like transcendental meditation. Yeah.
Okay.
So they possessed a decentralized, oath-bound network operating across the entire Middle East and Central Asia.
An oath-bound network?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was essentially a secret society before the European secret societies were a thing.
Yep.
And this fusion of Islamic mysticism, Hermetic philosophy, and structured initiation became Theosophical Sufism, preserving the ancient theology while the West remained locked in the Dark Ages.
You said theosophical there.
Yeah, that's what they're called. Theosophical Sufism. That's where Blavatsky got their
Not a modern term.
Goes back to
where that term comes from.
Yeah, goes back to about 900 CE.
Oh, I thought she made it up.
No. Well, it just means like theosophy just means like the ophi is like the theo is
God.
Theology is it's like God, and then the sophical is like wisdom. So it's like the wisdom of the gods essentially is what theosophy means.
I guess you'd expect that to predate her, I suppose.
Yeah. Nothing is original.
Fine. I'll take a
Nothing
point away
was
from
original
Helena
from her. You could call her a plagiarist, or you could say that she was speaking to the same entities that bestowed that knowledge to the Sufis.
I'll just call her a plagiarist, I think.
Was she speaking to the scholars from Alexandria in around 300 CE, or did she plagiarize them? I don't know.
She read a book in her uncle's castle or whatever it was.
Yeah. So after the First Crusade ended in 1099, the Christians took Jerusalem, and in 1118 the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon were created. They came to be called the Knights Templar, and they took up residence in Al-Aqsa Mosque, which they renamed Templum Solomonus. For all the details of that, I'll point you to the Dirt Unit. I think it's episode 38, maybe. It's always been about the temple, where we cover that in great detail.
Yes.
We will not do that this time. So at this same time as the Templars, operating from mountain fortresses in Persia and Syria, a highly esoteric Shia sect known to the West as the Hashashins established a localized, stateless empire.
I knew it.
The etymology of assassin derives from Hashishin. The Grand Master of this order, known as the Old Man of the Mountain, used heavy doses of hashish to drug recruits. While they were unconscious, they were transported into hidden lush gardens filled with exotic food and women designed to mimic the Islamic concept of paradise. After they woke up and experienced the physical stimulation, they were once again drugged and returned to their barracks. The chemical conditioning secured absolute obedience. They bypassed force and used drugs to convince their recruits that the paradise they were fighting for is real. These soldiers would then go on and, utilising targeted assassination and psychological terror, they would freeze the larger Sunni and Crusader political establishments. The Templars
You can't really blame the soldiers, can you?
No.
Like, what the fuck else do they have to compare it to? Like,
Exactly.
just
Yeah.
like, okay.
The Templars and the Assassins shared an operating theatre in the Levant. The historical record shows that they engaged in diplomacy, truces and financial exchange, with the Assassins paying tribute to the Templars at various points. The secrecy, the compartmentalised initiation and the weaponisation of religious devotion for geopolitical objectives by these Eastern esoteric groups was heavily observed and absorbed by the West during this period of occupation. And this exchange with the Templars extended directly into pharmacology. The Templar medics utilised a specific concoction known as the Elixir of Jerusalem. The surviving recipe details a mixture of palm wine, aloe vera pulp and hashish. The cannabinoids acted as an anti-inflammatory and a painkiller, allowing the knights to survive battlefield wounds. And when King Philip IV executed his raid on the Templars in 1307, the official state inventories of seized preceptories in Normandy explicitly recorded the possession of large quantities of hemp. Now, it's commonly written, and I also said it on our temple episode, that the Templars were digging during their time at the temple. It said they were digging for relics and secrets. But a more nuanced interpretation of that is needed. Because Al-Aqsa had been the centre of Islamic culture for thousands of years, for hundreds of years, at the point they moved in. It was essentially a library of Islamic philosophical literature. So the digging they were doing was more likely information archaeology than physically moving dirt. Seeing as the Sabians had translated the Hermetic text a couple hundred years earlier, this is surely where they came across it, and they took it very seriously. They used their Hermetic knowledge of sacred geometry and mathematics to go and build the great cathedrals of Europe and embed themselves in strategic European hotspots, namely France, Portugal, and Britain. The big old temple in the middle of London, the London Temple, that was Templar HQ. I wish I knew that. I wish I understood the history of the City of London when I used to work in it. Because I used to drink at the Temple walkabout all the time. And I never once stopped to consider what this fucking weird-ass old temple directly in the centre of London actually was.
Which temple did you say it was, sorry?
The London Temple.
That's what
it's just called the Temple.
I thought you said something else.
Yeah, this was Templar HQ. Now, the London Temple was and still is, I believe, its own sovereign territory within the sovereign territory of the City of London.
Okay.
And over just a couple of centuries, the Templars had gone from escorting Christians making the pilgrimage to Jerusalem to pioneering the concept of banking, becoming incredibly rich, powerful, and essentially borderless, to eventually becoming a literal embodiment of the Platonic idea of a secret elite group of philosopher kings pulling the strings from the shadows. And in 1312, the Templars had bit off more than they could chew. King Philip of France owed them too much money, and he had the order dissolved, and the knights rounded up and hung. The Inquisition records state that the Templars worshipped or consulted an entity called Baphomet, often described as a severed, mummified head, a skull with two faces, or a horned deity. According to confessions extracted under torture, the Templars didn't pray to Baphomet for salvation. They used Baphomet as an oracle. They believed the entity had power to make trees flower, make the land fertile, and defeat their enemies. It gave them strategic and financial directives that allowed them to monopolize European banking. But it didn't give them a heads up about King Philip, and he rounded them up and had them hung.
Yeah, okay. So two things, sorry, but the fertility thing, that's Baal was a fertility goddess as well, wasn't she? That was, or not Baal.
That was Asherah.
Yeah, Asherah. So that's the thing.
The consort of Yahweh, yes.
Yeah.
Yahweh's ex-wife.
And you're saying this French king, Philip, just owed them too much money and then decided instead of paying it back, he'd just kill them?
Like I said, I'm not, it's not a stretch when I say that they became the literal embodiment of the Platonic idea of a secret elite group of philosopher kings pulling the strings from the shadows. They owned the royalty of Europe. They all owed them money. They were in they were right in the heart of all the important locations across the continent, and also King Philip specifically owed them a fuckload of money.
Yeah, and then King Philip decides, okay, well, that's cool and all, but you're still only like 20 guys with swords. I'm just going to wipe you out?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but they weren't only 20 guys with swords, because they were set up in many other cities across Europe. But the French Templars were gone. Their land holdings were seized by the church, and they were handed to their rival Crusader Knights, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta.
Ugh.
The French Templars were cooked, but the order didn't die.
It's not one thing, it's another.
In Portugal, King Denis refused the papal order to persecute the network.
King Denis?
Yeah, of
that
Portugal.
Can't be right. That can't be right.
Yeah. Unless it's like pronounced. It's not. It's spelt with one N, so it might be pronounced differently. But I don't know.
Okay, sure.
He simply just transferred the assets and personnel of the Templars into a new order called the Order of Christ. Their headquarters was the Convent of Christ in the city of Tomar. The central structure was a massive 16-sided round church built specifically to mirror the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. The surrounding architecture was heavily coated with alchemical symbolism and armillary spheres, the primary astrological tool of the era, as well as Templar symbology everywhere. By the early 1400s, the Grand Master of the Order of Christ was Prince Henry the Navigator.
Oh, no. Here we go. This is it.
He established a highly classified research and development facility on the Sagres Peninsula. Henry actively recruited Jewish cartographers, Islamic astronomers, and Hermetic mathematicians fleeing persecution in the Mediterranean. He took the esoteric sciences of astrology and applied geometry, and he used them for maritime expansion.
This is it.
Yeah,
he was one who changed the world, perhaps more than anyone. Old Henry the Navigator. This is where I used to start my stories when I was telling the history of the the river in Australia and all this.
And it's I just had to scroll through the text to see if I kept this whole bit in, but yeah, it's funny why that age of discovery happened, but we'll get there soon.
Okay, we're still before that. All right. Well,
yeah,
we're there.
Well, we're pretty much there. So they perfected the astrolabe, the device developed by Islamic scholars to calculate the positions of the stars.
Yeah.
This, physically was they were holding a brass disc to the sky to determine a location on a featureless ocean. To the uninitiated, it looked like sorcery.
Yeah.
To the Order of Christ, the Hermetic doctrine, as above, so below, was a literal navigational coordinate system. Contrary to popular belief, they were not launching the Age of Discovery just to secure cheaper spice routes.
Oh, okay. That was my
They were
theory.
operating on a highly specific esoteric military objective. The European elite at this time were obsessed with this myth of Prester John. He was documented as an immortal, enlightened Christian king who ruled a vast, technologically advanced utopian empire. And this wasn't a fringe theory that was, whispered in taverns after a few pints of ale. This was official, documented state policy. And in 1453, Prince Harry's personal royal chronicler, Gomez Ianez de Zurara, explicitly laid out the operational motives in his book, which I'm not going to try and pronounce. Alongside mapping the coast and finding gold, Zurara wrote that the prince was desperately seeking to locate this specific Christian king to forge a military alliance against the Islamic empires.
I thought he came later. That's interesting.
No, he's a constant thing for like the next few hundred years.
Prester John.
Yeah. Originally they placed Prester John somewhere in India or Central Asia. When Western envoys actually travelled east during the Mongol expansion, they found no advanced Christian utopia, and they decided it must be located elsewhere. Then they started receiving fragmented reports of an isolated ancient Christian kingdom operating in East Africa. The Order of Christ thought this has to be the invincible empire of Prester John.
Well, that's just Ethiopia that they're talking about,
It
right?
was just Ethiopia,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
And because the overland routes to the east were completely locked down by the Ottomans and the Mamluk empires, Henry's strategy was to use their advanced astrolabes to sail entirely around the African continent. They thought the Portuguese navy could then attack the Islamic empires from the Atlantic and Mediterranean, while Prester John's mythical army would sweep up from the south and the Red Sea. And this was the system that birthed the New World. Christopher Columbus married Philippa Moniz Perestrello, the daughter of a knight of the Order of Christ, who served as a navigator for Prince Henry. And when Columbus gained access to his deceased father-in-law's charts and navigational logs, he was directly tapping into the Order's classified Hermetic database.
Hold on, I didn't know that. This was connected to this.
Yeah, and when Columbus sailed west in 1492, the sails of his ships were the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria were all painted with the massive red cross of the Order of Christ. The Templars' successors utilised an esoteric quest for a hidden master to accidentally discover the Americas. The Templars in London weren't as lucky.
Accidentally discover the Americans.
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me?
The Templars in London weren't as lucky. They did have a possible out, though. Scotland at the time was ruled by Robert the Bruce, who had been excommunicated by the Pope. He had no reason to follow any papal orders to prosecute the Templars.
Fuck the Pope.
Yeah, exactly. In 1314, during the Battle of Bannockburn, in the War for Scottish Independence, basically exactly the point where the movie Braveheart finishes, it looked like Scotland was out of luck. But the story goes that a fresh force of highly skilled knights appeared, carrying no Scottish banners. Legend has it this was 30 or so of the Templars that had managed to make it all the way north after fleeing London, and the Scots were able to secure their victory and their independence. If this is true, it was likely organised through Sir William St Clair. So the St Clairs were a major Norman family with branches in England and Scotland. They had vast land holdings in the south of England and would have been frequent visitors to the London Temple. Sir William himself had acquired land from the Templars in 1280. He was good friends with Robert the Bruce, and he had the perfect safe house for the Templars in Roslin Chapel. He also had proximity to the various stonemasons guilds to send them to keep them busy. Whether this Templar escape actually happened or not is hotly contested. But I think for one, the point of it would have been for people to think it didn't happen. But it doesn't matter anyway, because the outcome is exactly the same. Roslin Chapel, which is adorned in Hermetic and Templar symbols, amongst some other curiosities like corn and maize, became the central safe house for Hermetic wisdom in the British Isles, and the Sinclair family became the custodians. Centuries later, in 1598, a Scottish official named William Shaw, serving as the Master of Works to King James VI, issued the Shaw Statutes. Officially, this document reorganised the stonemasons guilds in Scotland, dictating how lodges should operate. Following these statutes, the Master Masons of Scotland drafted and signed the Charter of St Clair in 1600. These legal documents officially recognised the Sinclair family, who built Roslin Chapel, as the hereditary Grand Masters and patrons of the Masons of Scotland. And we will leave it there for this time.
Okay. All right. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. I skipped a couple centuries there, but we will fill in the gaps as we go along.
So where are we? We're about what? What?
1598 was where I was but I thought I'd better add that in now while we're bringing up the St Clairs.
Okay.
But we will go over that again at a later date when we start following the Freemasons.
So we're still in the midst of the age of Pisces.
Yeah, so we're at about 1315.
The middle of the age of Pisces.
Yeah. And yeah, the Middle Ages. Yes.
Got it.
But we will continue tracking the Hermetic flame, and eventually not long after where we leave off here, it is brought into Italy, which explodes into the Renaissance, and then about a
Let's
century.
not gloss over that term either. Renaissance. The new birth, the rebirth.
Yes.
Renaissance.
And we'll get to. There's a whole other thing with ages where they worked out ages within the ages, and there's a couple of English figures that are sort of pivotal to that, and then they bring it back to England, and then it bursts the Enlightenment. But for now, we are done.
All right.
Talk of a political dirt unit.
Is typical of